Welcome back to The Creatives, everybody, where we explore creativity through conversation. That is exactly what we're doing here today. We're exploring it through yet another conversation, and I am joined today by Mr. Tyler Griffin. Tyler, thank you for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ramsey. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to know you. Tyler and I go back quite a few years, and we'll get into how I know Tyler in a bit. But Tyler is a mortgage broker by profession. However, he is creative in ways that we will find out in this episode. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Midnight Hour Studios for sponsoring the show and giving us this wonderful space. This studio is a blank canvas studio space where you can rent it and you can make your creative dreams and creative visions come to life. There is a discount code for you in the description below where you'll get 25% off your first booking. So check that out and let us know if you have any questions. And also, thank you to Pano Media for powering this production and sponsoring this podcast. Pano Media is your trusted source for high-quality video production and drone video production services in Ottawa and surrounding areas. So, without further ado, we're going to dive into this episode. This is technically season 2 in a way.
Okay, starting it off.
Starting it off with you,
Love it. Nice.
Back into the cold months. We have this weird streak where every episode we recorded, it was snowing last winter.
Okay.
But it didn't happen. Not today.
No.
We're going to break that.
Yeah.
This time. But yeah, before we dive into it, Tyler, I'll tell you a little bit about the podcast and kind of how it came to be and why it exists. So I was starting to meet lots of people, and, I find the further I progress in life, the more questions I have instead of answers, which is kind of challenging in ways. So I always liked the idea of talking and, like networking with people. And I thought, hey, why don't we just start recording this and see where we go? And
yeah, podcasts are a great way to like meet extra people, get extra points of view on how you're progressing with things, and I know a lot of people that have done really well with them.
Nice. Yeah. It was really just like an exploration. Like it was curiosity. It was non-client work, so there was no rules, there was no guidelines. It was just like do it, but then
do what you want to do.
Do what you want to do, explore creativity. And I was starting to kind of look at creativity in a way where I'm like, okay, I don't consider myself creative in the conventional sense. So I noticed there was a lot of people like that who were not like artists or painters or whatever, like creative by the textbook definition of what I guess, the cliche definition of a creative is. So I started realizing people are creative in many, many ways. And that's kind of why you're here today. So the podcast was dedicated to exploring that through conversations. So
that's a great way to do it,
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. There's lots of different ways that people are creative. I got a kid who does a lot of hands-on traditional art. She does some digital art, but then
that's cool.
There's also the people out there, like some of the people that I work with in my industry, they can have a specialty they like to call creative financing, right? Which is how to get people to that end goal that they want in a house in a way that then like might not traditionally qualify, or how to get into something into investments with commercial real estate or even residential real estate, where a lot of the ways may say no, but if you get creative with their financing, there is some workarounds and some gray areas. I love living in the gray areas, and you can make a lot of big moves by doing that. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. The gray area. That's a key word. That's a word Tyler said to me many years ago. And I want to explore that gray area, because I also love living in the gray area of you're not necessarily doing anything wrong. You're just kind of bending things.
You're working within the rules, but definitely pushing the boundaries of them, because if you live within the rule sets as they're laid out, it's very tough to progress. Speaking specifically towards real estate, the banks want to cap you out at a certain point. The lenders want to cap you out at a certain point. And so you have to get into that next step of creativity.
I love that.
To make it work.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I wanted to invite you on here, because we live in a time where it's turbulent economically, and you hear all these buzzwords get thrown around: recession, high interest, inflation. They get thrown around, and I feel like as someone who's in their 20s, it feels like there's no hope. And I feel like we've got to be creative, and I think you have a lot of cool ideas, and we'll kind of dive into how people can deploy creativity in their like financial world and in their life that way. For sure. Before we dive in, I'll tell you guys how I know Tyler. Tyler, it's interesting. I don't know if you know this, but I photographed your wedding.
Yeah.
You know that part.
Yeah, I know that part. I was there.
That was probably one of my first ever paid photography jobs.
It was not very well paid, so thank you very much.
It's okay. It's all good, man.
No, yeah, you and Holden came out and shot the wedding, which was awesome. We were looking for, more of somebody I knew to shoot the wedding as opposed to just like a company that I could sign up. You guys did a great job. We still go through the wedding photos regularly. We got the album up on the
love that
on the coffee table, so it's out there all the time. And yeah, that was a great introduction. You actually shot my wife's side of things
the preparation
when they were getting ready,
right?
And Holden was with me and the boys over getting ready where we were, and then we had a beautiful wedding out at
Herb
the Herb Garden.
Herb Garden.
There we go. I was gonna forget the name.
Almont.
Thank you. Yeah, the Herb Garden in Almont. So
nice.
Yeah, that was it was an awesome setup. We just rented the venue. They let us bring in all of our own stuff, all of our own catering, all of our own alcohol service, everything, all our own decorations. So getting back to the creativity, they gave us that blank canvas and let us kind of like paint our wedding on it. Right?
I love
which was
that.
Nice. Yeah.
I remember at the time, like I knew you from the car scene. You had a really cool Volkswagen at the time, and Holden was a friend of mine, and he had a Volkswagen. I had a Volkswagen, and he's like, "Hey man, I need help shooting this wedding. I'll pay you." I think it was like $150 or, and at the time, like there was a lot of money, I was like $150 to go
and if
take
you've never
photos
been paid for that task, right? Like it kicks you off. Yeah,
it was crazy. I remember driving home like, holy shit, I just got paid to do photos and I had fun. And I don't shoot weddings anymore because I did it for a while and I realized it wasn't for me, but it was, those early foundations were really important, and it's just a cool connection.
Absolutely.
Tyler had a really, really customized Volkswagen Corrado, if you know what that is. It's like this really like short-lived Volkswagen that's two-door, like kind of hatchback. Is it a hatchback?
It's like a hatchback coupe kind of thing. I think a coupe is what I would probably label it as. Yeah.
That thing was crazy.
That was a fun car. That was my second kind of Volkswagen, and again, getting back to it, I really was able to paint my artwork with that car, right?
Yeah.
I took that car from where I bought it to where it finished, complete color change, complete new interior, full new engine setup. Like it was quite the progress over 5 or 6 years,
It really was.
and a lot of fun. And it's where I met, a lot of my good friends today. I was out karting last night with Jeevan and Kurt and all the guys. They were in town, so we were, these are friendships that have lasted a lifetime from wrenching together when we were probably too young to be spending that much money on cars.
You guys built some insane cars.
We did build some cool cars.
You guys had, there was a Crazy House was like your guys' crew's name, and these are like show-stopping cars, like air suspension, 3-piece wheels, like custom paint, custom engines. Like I remember at the time looking at you, like all you guys, and seeing your cars, I was like, oh my God. That's when something clicked in my brain. Maybe things started going downhill from there, but financially
we pushed each other too. And that was the best part about Crazy House is like, I'd hit the shop and, Jeevan's there and he's like taking his headlights apart to customize his headlights. Right. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing there? Right. And next thing you know, he's like, oh, I looked up this tutorial. And like a lot of this, just to get back into it, was before Facebook had really taken off in the way that it had. So we were all forum people, right? We were on VW Vortex, Ottawa V-dubbing. And so like you'd have to spend hours searching through and asking the OG guys, like, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? And it like I said, it kicked off a lot of my good friendships today come from that time.
I love that. Yeah, that's the reason why I love cars, and I have many friends too because of cars.
Yeah.
So Tyler, I want to start by asking you, like, what does creativity mean to you?
That's a great question. It's not one I'd considered on the way in. I think it comes down to, there's the way that 95% of people transact on a day-to-day basis, right? And you can look at anything, whether it's, putting a car together or just driving a car or financing, or even, in your case, photography. And there's the way that a lot of people do it, and you can pick up these, like, here's the easy, safe way to do it. But then that creativity, I think, is in the 10% or the 5% of like, hey man, this feels different. And a lot of it's in a feeling of whether it feels creative or whether it feels like they've taken a thing which is commonplace. So, for you shooting cars or shooting at dealerships, and then, hey, that video had a different feel to it. And I think it's an ability to convey emotion through your artwork too is a big part of that creativity, right? So you can make people feel a certain way because of how you've put something together, and that's where the creativity comes in.
I like that. I like that because so when you are venturing into the unknown, and even if things don't work, that's still, you consider that creative, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, creativity doesn't mean success. It just means that you're
definitely not.
You're trying something in a way that a very small subset of the population is trying it.
Interesting. Yeah. I like that. And I feel like you bring that into your work and into your life, and just seeing kind of how you progressed. And I'd like to kind of hear your story of how you kind of, origin story of Tyler Griffin, where you started, how you end up as a mortgage broker, and how did you end up as a kind of mortgage broker that broke that mold and started pioneering your own way and building that out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, I mean, it's a story of a lot of like right place, right time. Yeah. It's honestly how a lot of it started out. Back, I'd say probably 14 years ago now, my buddy and I were living in Ottawa together. We were each in 2-bedroom apartments. We were working together. And, we looked at each other and said, this is dumb. You're spending $1,600 on rent. I'm spending $1,600 on rent. We're both in 2-bed apartments. We're single dudes. Let's move in together. Save half our money. So we moved in together, and we lived together for 12 months in that apartment. And about 2 months in, we both said, hey, we're going to be able to save up enough to buy a house this year. This is great because we're saving so much living together.
Sick.
And a couple of months later, we're, the savings are going, we're eating the craft dinner, we're not out every night, like the life's changing. And I said, hey man, do you want to buy a duplex? Because like we're looking at maybe a condo in Barrhaven, we're looking at like a stacked townhome, something like that. And I said, let's look a little bit further out. Let's look at a duplex and let's buy a duplex together. And we ended up moving to Smith Falls, which is about an hour outside of Ottawa, give or take. Yeah. And we bought a duplex and a house, and he and I moved into the house. We bought the duplex. The duplex made enough money to pay the costs of living in the house.
Nice. Duplex is like a basement apartment.
So the one we bought was actually like a side-by-side. So it was like two mirror image houses, like side by each.
Cool.
And it was about 1 kilometer away from the house that we bought. And then I commuted for...
You commuted from Smith Falls?
Yeah, for 6 years. I was driving about 70 kilometers each way to work, and a lot of my friends gave me a lot of shit for it. They're like, oh, you're never going to be around. You're not going to be doing this. But it allowed me to get into the housing market earlier than I would have, and in a way that I was able to double up on my equity pay down by having the tenants pay down part of the duplex and really cover my cost of living in the house. So, in the space of about 12 months, I went from $1,600 a month rent to $800 a month rent to nothing out of pocket on my house because the duplex was covering it. So I was really able to like cut the bottom line on my living expenses that way.
Yeah. And you weren't a mortgage broker at this time.
No, at that point I was managing car dealerships. Nice. I did that for a long time. I'm a solid high school graduate. Post-secondary was really not my thing. And automotive let me get into a career early that paid well for the age range. I did find that it capped out earlier than I kind of hoped it would.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was managing car dealerships there, and then I got my brokering license in 2019. I bought a couple of rental properties in 2019. I'd sold one of my places in Smith Falls. I bought 2 homes in Ottawa. I was living with my wife at this point. This is a couple of years after.
It's kind of around when I met. Yeah,
a couple of years after the wedding. 2017, you shot the wedding.
Okay.
2019 is when I made the moves and bought these extra places, like January 2019. So like a year and a half later.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
And after I bought the second one, so I bought one, put a basement apartment in it, refinanced it, bought the one right beside it, so we had 2 houses side by each. And my broker at the time, Jeff Gislett, who was my old mortgage broker, said, look, man, you know what you're doing. You basically told me how to structure these files. You gave me points to like build your file for the lender that like some of my brokers wouldn't have known. So just go get your license.
Nice.
Right? And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll go get my license.
You weren't even considering it.
No, I wasn't really considering it. I'd been feeling a bit of a pinch in automotive because like it very quickly went to, 60 grand a year when I was younger. But then like, the 60 to 70 mark was very difficult. 70 to 80 was much slower. And like, I didn't really see growth beyond that.
Yeah.
And it's not an industry where you've got a pension, where you've got great health insurance. It's not an industry that I felt had the growth ability that I was looking for in my life.
Yeah.
So in 2019, I got my brokering license. I said, I'm going to take a 2-year timeline to transition to brokering full time, because it is a 100% commission-based job, which is scary.
Yeah.
I had just had my second kid. So I had a 10-year-old and a newborn.
Yeah.
And COVID hit. And COVID hit. The dealerships shut down. The body shops all shut down. And they didn't shut down for long. They were essential services after a little bit. But for a minute,
you didn't know, though, at the time.
They were like, hey, go home, right? And my wife worked for the government, so she was able to transition to fully remote work, getting paid full time. So I stopped working at the time, took care of the kids, because the kids weren't in daycares, because daycares were closed.
Yeah.
And so I was taking care of the kids full time, and I had my brokering license, and we were pregnant with our third kid coming. And at the time, we were living on the main floor of our house. We had a basement apartment. We had a tenant in the basement. And like, it's not a big house. So with 2 kids, it was full, and with 3, it was going to be bursting. So at that point, we asked the basement tenant, hey, man, like, third kid's coming. We need the basement back to live in. He said, oh, that's good. I was going to buy a house anyway. I said, well, I'll help you buy a house, I guess, right? And that was my first file.
That's cool.
It was one of my tenants, and so I helped him get into a house, and then I kind of like put it out at that point. So that was in May of 2020 was when I funded my first deal, May 15th, 2020. And I put it out at that point. I reached out to my friends. I said, hey, I'm going to be brokering, like, what's going on? And by September, I'd funded $5 million worth of deals, which is like more than a lot of brokers do in their first years. So I just had a really good word of mouth referral network. I'd kept in touch with a lot of my friends, and people just were happy to refer to me, and it kind of took off.
That's awesome.
And that September, I reached out to the body shop and said, hey, like, you guys aren't busy because nobody's driving, because in COVID, nobody was driving. I was managing a body shop, so there's not a lot of accidents happening.
Yeah.
I said, you're probably happy not to be paying my salary. I'm happy not to be working in automotive anymore. I'm going to try this out. And then it was really off to the races, and, a little bit of right place, right time in terms of the housing market kind of going wild during COVID, right? So prices were up, interest rates were down. A lot of good support from my networks. Nice. I got one good buddy, and like, shout out to Leading Phase Electric and Brad Angelos, who's a good buddy of mine, and he sent me a huge number of my first deals in my first year. And he's just one of those guys that's got it. Everybody knows his name, and he's got a guy for everybody. And he sent me a massive amount of my work in my first year, and from there, the referral tree just kind of like branched off.
Nice.
And then end of 2021, so like a year and a half later, I'd gone from fairly new at the job to top producing agent at the brokerage I was at. So we had about 16 agents, one principal broker. I was on the top of the list.
That's awesome.
I started to like nip at the heels of the broker owner in terms of funded volume. And I sat down with him end of 2021. We went out for dinner, and I said, look, man, like, you've been doing this for 20 years. Your foot's off the gas. You're doing the same number of files year after year. Yes, you're making more money because volumes are going up, but like, you're doing the same number of transactions, which means you're not actually growing the business. I said, I want to grow it. You want to spend 6 months a year in Florida? Let's make a deal. And so I made an offer to buy the company at the end of 2021.
That's incredible.
And we closed on that deal. Actually, we're really close to a year out. So November 17th, 2022, we closed on that deal.
Sick.
And we're, November 9th or 10th today?
Yeah. 2023,
10th, yeah.
So just about a year ago?
Just about a year ago, we closed on purchasing it. I've implemented a lot of stuff and tying it back to the creativity here. I'm doing a lot of AI ad generation, AI communication with clients. I've got a lot of automated software that I've brought into place, which is really streamline the process, because it is a transactional based business, and like to be able to go from 10 to 15 to 20 deals a month,
right,
you have to spend less man hours on each deal or work more.
So you're cutting down these man hours.
Cutting
with
down
tools
the man
like that.
hours with tools, right? So I've got some AI in behind my application program. So when you fill out your application, it tells me what documents I need right away. It requests them from you based on how you filled it out.
Cool.
My touch points with my clients are all automated.
Mm-hmm.
My Facebook ads are all, generated by ChatGPT and a couple other, I'm missing the name of it right now, but there's an AI image generator,
right?
That I use.
That's only recently though, right?
Super recently, and like I was at a conference I own a franchise, and I was at a franchise owners conference just a month ago, and like we had a big presentation on AI, and the guy who does it, who works for Mortgage Alliance corporate, said, 3 months ago I wouldn't be able to give this presentation, and 6 months from now it's going to be obsolete. He's like, every month right now there's like 2,000-3,000 AI tools hitting the table.
Yeah.
He's like, so I'm going to tell you how to do it today, and
you figured out
6 months from now I'll have a different conversation about how to do it, because it's not going to be the same. So it's really, shifted my ability to work more files with less overhead. We've been able to remove some of the support staff because we had too many support staff. As I mentioned earlier, we're going fully remote.
Nice.
So we won't have physical office space anymore.
That's cool.
Just a shifting environment for sure.
I mean, I feel like it all happened very quick. And I remember when you were starting out, you told me like you would like never stop working. Like you were just always.
Yeah, that goal might have shifted a little bit.
but that's what got you there in the beginning, right?
It is.
I know it's not sustainable long term.
No, I do work a lot, and like I take phone calls whenever my phone rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have shifted from like, hey, I'm going to do this until I can't anymore, to like a 7-year plan of like handing over the business to somebody else, have me just managing it. Because I think the ability's there for that. Yeah.
Nice, man.
Yeah,
that's really cool. It's an inspiring story to see how kind of far you came in a short time, and like
the purchase was structured creatively too. So like I purchased the business with zero money down, 0% interest, nothing out of pocket. Jeez. Just a deal over 5 years of a percentage of revenue paid to the old owner. And the reason we structured it up that way is he's in when you sell a small business in Canada, you get a capital gains tax exemption. So, he's getting all this money tax free. I'm paying zero.
The seller gets tax exemption?
Yeah, cool. $900,000 per shareholder of a corporation. So if you sell a corporation, you have a $900,000 one lifetime capital gains tax exemption. Jeez. So you can do it once, and it's kind of the government's way of incentivizing people to build those small businesses, grow them up, and then sell them.
Interesting.
It gives you that ability to sell off, walk away tax-free, right? So he's getting a good chunk of change tax-free. I'm not paying any interest, which in today's world is awesome because interest rates are wild. And, it's a purchase that I didn't have capital for. You can't really get funding for. I'm buying a client list, really, and saying, I'll work your client list. But, like, that's a very intangible asset to purchase, right?
And even if you were to value it, would be kind of insane, right? Like
it's tough to value because
okay,
there's no guarantee that these clients continue to work with me.
Right.
I could call up every one of them and they say, you're not Jeff. I'm not doing my mortgage with you. Right. And so like, it's very difficult to value, which is why we worked out a percentage of revenue, because I said, look, like if everybody says no, I can't just be paying you money I'm not making.
Yeah.
Right. And I was pretty confident that like our work habits are very similar. I was a bit more technologically forward than Jeff was. So I was going to be able to bring the business into, the current world of tech savvy people. A lot of people want to do this stuff on their phone now. So, my application's all mobile friendly. My website's mobile friendly.
Nice, man.
I switched to digital business cards, just that kind of stuff. Just getting out of the PDFs and Excel sheets and into having software do a lot of it for you.
I like that. Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm really intrigued by how you creatively kind of did business, because I feel like it is seemingly a non-creative. It's just like doing business and, owning business and doing mortgages is maybe not seen as a potentially creative way of living and working. And I am intrigued by how you did that. So I think it's cool how you were able to make things work. Was there anything that really helped you early on, aside from the right place, right time, and what was there anything that really fueled you forward?
Two things, I think. Number one, I am fairly financially motivated. So like I'll figure something out if there's money involved. And that's come from my time in real estate. I've always wanted to do better. I always feel like I'm behind the 8 ball. So always having that pressure on myself.
Yeah.
The second thing, honestly, is not being afraid to ask.
Nice.
I'm never afraid to like have a wild idea in my mind and be like, there's no way anyone's going to bite on this. A lot more often than you think they will.
Yeah.
And so if you go to them and you say, hey, I got this dumb, crazy idea. Here's the advantages to you. Mm-hmm. And then they look at it and they're like, I never would have considered this. Sure. Right. So like when I approached Jeff to purchase the business, like
no one had ever done that.
He had a timer on his phone for 6 years out. He's like, man, I wasn't retiring for another 6 years. And I was like, well, here's 6 years back in your life.
Yeah.
You're 50.
Yeah.
Go live life. That's a great age to be, snowbirding at.
Yeah.
And nobody had approached him. I don't think he had considered how he was going to exit.
Yeah.
Because it's not an industry that a lot of people consider how they're going to exit. They kind of just wind down their business as they go away.
And then they just close up the shop, right?
I'm just done, right?
Yeah.
But there's value to a phone number and an email address to get 200-300 inquiries a year, right?
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So I like the story, and I want to now, as a mortgage broker, you mentioned in the beginning, gray area.
Yeah.
I remember you have a hat that says
gray area
on it.
Yeah.
And I've found myself tickling the gray area for many years in a lot of the things that I do, because I find once you're able to play with that gray area, it's a kind of a good indicator that you've put in a shitload of hours into doing
the
something.
Rules.
Yeah, you know the rules enough to then bend them.
Yeah.
And it's a cool place to be, and it's, obviously you got to be careful. It's a lot of responsibility.
For sure.
But I want to know. I want to just kind of know about your gray area. How does it work? What does it mean?
Yeah, and
for you and your clients?
there's a few different things. So like, certain lenders, all these lenders have guidelines, but a lot of these guidelines are written in sand. Mm-hmm. And it's
what do you mean written in sand? Like
they're movable.
Okay.
And so you might start by reading a lender's sheet and saying, hey, this deal doesn't fit here. But again, by not being afraid to ask, by not being afraid to go after it, you can find out, oh, this is what they have on paper, but they actually have appetite for a bit more. Mm-hmm. Not to get too technical on the mortgage side, but there's some like debt to income ratios that are very specific for certain lenders and much more flexible for other lenders, and learning where you can push those boundaries.
It just like increases likelihood that your client's going to get funding to go buy a house,
exactly.
right?
Or learning how to increase income for business for self people is a big way, right? Like, hey, do you write off your car? How do you do this? Can I add that back to your income? Because most people don't, and some lenders allow that kind of stuff.
Nice.
So that, the ability to look at rental income in different ways for clients. There's some, again, like it's lender to lender, product to product, but by being able to hone in on those right products and push those boundaries of those lenders, and by working with lenders so much and building relationships, you get to kind of be able to ask for those exceptions that you might want, right? And say, hey, I know this person's income's a little bit lower than you might like, but look at the whole picture, and there's some common sense lending in behind it.
I like that, because essentially you're helping people buy a home. A lot of the time, is it their first home? Like, do you help a lot of first time?
I do a lot of first time home buyers. I do a lot of investors. I mean, it's really all over the map. I would say more of my business is focused on repeat clients than first time home buyers.
Yeah.
But even with first time home buyers, there's something to be said about like, hey, let's get you into this house, and maybe you're looking at houses that are a little bit outside of your budget. Well, maybe let's look at a place with a basement apartment. and let's move you into it and let's live there for 3-4 years. And then we'll completely rent that place out and move you into the next house, right? And by buying that more expensive place off the hop, you get more equity pay down. Your tenants are helping you pay for some of it. And now you're able to get into that, you know, out of that starter home and into that forever home faster.
I like that.
You know, I do a lot of work with financial planners because I can sometimes get things approved that they can't in terms of mortgage financing. So like IG Wealth does mortgages, and there are a couple of financial planning groups that do mortgages. But, you know, if they've got a client who's a server who's not claiming tips, there's ways that we can prove that to the lender, get that tip income included. I help their clients get into a house 2-3 years faster. And, you know, net worth of homeowners tends to be significantly higher than the net worth of non-homeowners, which then gives more ability and more focus on building their financial investments, which then benefits the financial planner.
I like that.
Right? So I go to them and say, look, you could have your client wait 2-3 more years to buy, or we could help them buy right now, and they can start building their portfolio with you faster because they've got that ability to.
I like it. I feel like these are the things that a bank won't really do for you.
Yeah.
Like, cause I feel like a bank's not gonna give you that route to take of buy a place with an apartment in the basement and then, you know, do that 3-year
For
plan,
sure.
use that as a stepping stone, because I don't know. As someone who, again, like I said, I've only in the recent years started like having these considerations.
Yeah.
It's extra hard when you own a business to even have the ability to buy property, because you're setting up one thing and then now you're responsible for the success of the business and the success of yourself. So that's quite a challenge. And
the other thing with banks oftentimes, and like, you know, not to disparage them too much, they definitely have their place in financing. But
totally.
A lot of the times when you're dealing with somebody at the branch, number one, they're not a licensed mortgage agent or a licensed mortgage broker. They work under a different exemption, so they don't have the same kind of education background. Number two, being a mobile mortgage specialist or a branch mortgage specialist, whatever, usually isn't their end goal at the bank. Branch manager is, or regional manager is. So to your point where they're not building those 3-4 year plans for you, it's because in 3-4 years, they're probably not doing mortgages anymore. Yeah. Right. Whereas like I've set it up, I've got 18 agents. We've got a couple full-time staff.
Nice.
So we are like, this is what I will be doing until I don't have to work anymore.
Nice.
There's no, like, in 5 years, you're not going to call and get somebody else sitting in the same office as me, right?
Yeah.
It'll be me.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people that are in like seemingly non-creative industries, and like how can they incorporate that creativity kind of into their work and
That's a tough one. And Ottawa's a bit of a boring town in that regards. You know, there's a ton of people that are
there's no room,
they show up, they punch their government job for 35 years, you know, they work their pension, they get out. So I mean, there is a huge number of people that maybe don't employ as much creativity in their career, and what I guess I can say is it doesn't always have to be career related. Finding an outlet for it, because everybody's got it in them, you know. Finding an outlet like the cars. Yeah. You know, my wife loves to paint. My middle kid, like, she every second conversation is pretend that, right?
Imagining.
She's always just imagining stuff. And so
that.
You know, don't forget that like moment when you were a kid when everything could be pretend, right? Like, she'll come up, pretend I'm a teenager, right? 'Cause she's got an older teenager sister, right? Pretend I'm a teenager and I don't have a soother right now. All right, cool, I'll pretend that. Right? Like, yeah.
So she wants you to play along with it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's cool, man. I love how kids remind us to play. Yeah. You know, and
very much.
It's because you feel like, as an adult, you're like, I'm not allowed to be goofy and play and say silly stuff.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. That creative expression is necessary. So that's cool. But do you find yourself challenged by things as on an individual level, whether it's personal, professional, or the things that challenge you, and you know, how do you feel about them? Were you doing anything to
organization challenges me on a daily basis? It is not my strong point. My wife's always making fun of me. She's like, you swear to God you run out of the house with your arms in the air, right? Like, and she's not wrong. Flying. Like, the number of times I'm like in the car, on my way to work, I'm like, fuck, laptop's at home.
Yeah.
Right? Like turn around, like that's work, right? So
Yeah.
I find organization challenging. You know, and big kudos to my wife because she's a super organized person. So she takes care of a lot of that for me. Right now, what I'm finding the most challenging in today's world is motivating people. It's not easy, man. A lot of people I find are pretty happy with that complacent level, and they're not looking for that next step. And so I do find motivating my agents as a difficult thing right now. A lot of people are beat up by the financial situation that the world seems to be in, and but yeah, mostly organization, you know.
Yeah.
And I've hired some great coaches. I'm a big fan of coaching, so I've had either a mortgage coach or a business coach every year I've been doing this.
That's cool.
And they've brought a lot of structure into how I work my files and how I handle things that builds in those routines. And they're things that I probably would have figured out, but I probably would have figured out 3 years later than I did, or 4 years later than I did. And so it was really just, I kind of call it like a cheat code.
The coaches?
Hiring a coach is like a cheat code. It just, you know,
seems interesting.
Figure out the who, not how. Don't figure out how to do something. Figure out who's doing it and then just ask them, how did you do this? You're already doing it the way I want. There's nothing out there that's, you know, uninvented at this point. There's very little out there that's uninvented at this point. And so you can always reach out to somebody who's succeeding in the area you want to be succeeding in. And either find somebody who's a coach who's already doing that, who's taking on clients, taking on students, right?
Yeah.
Or go to that person and give them a benefit and say, you know, a great example I heard recently was like, you know, if back to podcasts here, if you want to become a podcast editor, you can go to somebody and say, let me edit your podcast. Or you can just start doing it. Start re-editing their podcast and sending it to them.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks. Every time they release, be like, hey, here's my edit on it. Hey, here's my... And after a couple of months, man, the person's going to be like, all right,
you're hired.
do you want to try this? Right? Like,
if someone did that, I would actually like...
Exactly, right? And
let's
so,
have
like,
a conversation.
there's going to be some... And that's that drive, right? And so if the person who you're targeting isn't currently a coach, isn't currently a mentor... You know, if somebody calls me up as a new broker, they say, can I pick your brain for a minute? Like, you got a couple shots at that, but like, at the same time, I'm not just here to give value. I want to see some back. Right. So like, if you come to me and say, hey, I think I can do this, come to me with a solution, or in terms of the podcast, come to me, show me your re-edit.
Right.
How would you shift it around? How would you cut it up? You know, make an intro song for it. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just go to you. And then eventually you're going to be like, hey man, do you want to do this? Hey, can you build some graphics for me? Can you do this for me? Right.
I like that. That's bold.
It is.
I find being bold, it's worked in your world where you offered the owner of the brokerage, like, hey, you know, let's work out a deal. I feel like that boldness is, if everyone was bold, I think it'd be an insane world. Yeah. Like, we'd be flying cars and
I didn't make up the saying, but like fortune favors the bold is a very real saying, right?
Yeah.
So like, you can call it fortunate. You can say it must be nice. You can say it's lucky, but sometimes you just do it.
Yeah.
You know, my wife's she's always giving me shit. She's like, you just do things and they work out. And I said, yeah, but I do them. Right. Like I could not do them and life would probably work out too, but like I just do them. And then once I do them, you commit to it, you do it.
You attempt it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, I would imagine, many things you do that don't work out too.
Absolutely. And I mean, similar, like when we first met, as you were saying, you were just starting to shoot. Like that was your first paid gig,
It was just photography. Don't even do too much photography anymore.
And at a certain point, you had to approach a car dealership. Be like, hey, can I be your go-to?
Yeah.
And that's bold.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're young.
Yeah.
To walk into a high-end car dealership and be like, hey, I want to do your promotional material.
Yeah.
That's not small, right? Because like these are big corporations, big companies set in their ways. You know, and 10 years ago, their media budget probably wasn't what it is today, right? So you're trying to convince them to do stuff that they weren't doing that's been working. So yeah,
I like that. It's a good reminder to be bold because when you do things and they seem to work, I have a tendency of, you know, leaning towards complacency, but then snapping myself out of it. And it's always like I'm trying to find that balance between just living and being a human and just pushing like crazy and being like very aggressive and just go, do better. Cause like, I find it can be tiring,
For sure.
to always be like, okay, I got to do better. Okay. What's the next thing? So I'm still trying to find that balance. I haven't found it yet.
And I don't think
it's
it's,
a work in
I
progress.
don't think it's a balance that you ever land at, that you stay at.
Right.
I believe it's really which side of the teeter-totter are you on that week, right? Like, are things too easy, too complacent? You're not like, shit, I better pick up the phone, make some cold calls, right? Like, oh, I got to go out to a marketing event. I don't love going to networking events. It's not my favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a lot of small talk with a lot of people I don't know, but like, sometimes you got to go.
Yeah. Sometimes you
You know, and so whether it's, you know, sponsoring autocross, so I sponsor the autocross events out of the Canadian Tire Center.
That's awesome.
So I got to go out there and just like shoot the shit with people I don't know. And but I mean, it paid off this year. You know, I think we did 4 or 5 deals from autocross clients.
Sick.
And it's one of those things. It's just another branch on the network tree, right?
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Just quickly, if you don't know what autocross is, it's
Sorry.
parking lot slalom. They make a track in a parking lot out of cones, and they call them cone
It's like
heads.
grassroots racing. They do call
It's
them,
cone heads. It's the cheapest way to race your car.
So anyway, if you're in Ottawa, come on out, Canadian Tire Center. Check out the Ottawa Motorsports Club.
Sick.
They do the autocross. It's a lot of fun.
What about rallycross? Are you sponsoring that too?
I'm not sponsoring rallycross at this point because I don't race it.
Okay.
I sponsor autocross mostly because my sponsorship gets me free racing.
Did you race? Did you race this year?
I race my wagon. I race my E4. I push my E400 around those cones. Absolutely.
How'd it go?
Yeah. I mean, it's not fast, but it's fun,
yeah.
right? Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I mean, it's a great way to spend a Saturday or a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's good people, good laughs. You know, a lot of like-minded people that you can shoot the shit with, and you know, have that underlying connection of we all like doing dumb stuff with cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, it seems like you enjoy, aside from like not necessarily loving those networking events. It seems like you enjoy interacting with people.
I love networking
and talk. Yeah,
I don't like going to a networking event. I think those are two very different things.
Or it's like it's
right?
called
it's like,
a networking event.
You are going to this brewery to network is not my favorite thing because it just feels forced. I love networking organically, whether it's, you know, at a backyard barbecue or, you know, one of the real estate agents I work with throws a huge Halloween party. So we're there every year, and it's the more natural networking, the ability to just like be me, at some point mention this is what I do, and then have a connection out of it is much, I'm much more at home there than I am at like, hey, we're hosting a real estate investors networking event. It's just not my thing as much.
I like that. Yeah. Cause the human interactions and the connections are really what matter. Cause aside from the work that you might be doing with someone, you're spending time with that person. Yeah. And if you don't get along and you don't like each other, it's going to suck. And there's just going to be weird tension. And, you know, it's the reason some relationships in my life have dissolved. It's because there's just nothing there. There was no actual connection. It was just, it was a means to an end. And, you know, at a certain point it dries stale and you got to move on.
And creativity, whether, you know, specifically can be lonely. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, as I mentioned, when I first moved out to Smith Falls, a lot of my friends were like, oh, we're never going to see you, right? Like, you're living out there. And they were kind of right. You know, I'd miss some events because it'd be like 5 o'clock. I'm wrapping up work. Like, I got an hour drive home. I've been in my work clothes all day. You know, a lot of my other friends are like, oh, I'm going to pop home. We're going to go out for drinks or something. And I'm like, I'm not going to. Yeah. Because I'm going to go out after work in my work clothes when I was working at the car dealerships, you know, hang out, and then I'm not going to be home till 10, 11 o'clock at night. I got to be up an hour before everybody to make the commute in. Yeah. And so it can be, you know, a little lonely. And a lot of people, when I first started buying rental properties, you know, were negative about it a bit. Hey, this is going to be hard. Hey, it's going to be hard. Just
projecting it.
Yeah. So is working till I'm 90. Yeah. Like, I don't want to do that. That's going to be hard too. So I got to find a different answer. Right. Yeah. I
know that can be tough because I find you were breaking the mold, you know, you were doing something that maybe they had thought about.
and it's the same when
doing, and then they're just like.
And when you're an entrepreneur of any kind, you got your own business, right? Like, you might not have Saturday, Sunday free.
Yeah.
Right? You might need to go do a shoot, whether it's a staging shoot or something like that at 9:00 at night on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
When your friends who are working the 9 to 5s aren't.
I know.
Right? And so a lot of the times you're like, actually, man, I can come out for 20 minutes, half an hour, but then like, I got to go to a gig.
Yeah.
Or like, we're about to hit top carding last night, getting ready to head out, phone rings, this client, like I'm taking the call.
Yeah.
Every time. I'm taking the call.
Yeah.
Right? So it just puts you off that like synchronicity with the people that aren't doing that. And it can lead to like, I think you'll find out quickly who your true circle of friends is.
Because it is true. It can be lonely when you're in those grind modes, and that is a motivation. It was a big motivation of creating this podcast, was because I felt lonely. I felt like I had my family and my close circle, but outside of that, I felt like, is there anyone else out there? Like, hello, like, do you feel the same as I do? And I've been very pleasantly surprised to meet so many cool people in Ottawa who, have been on that journey, who've struggled through, even more difficult things than I have been through in my life. And it's comforting to know. And I feel like this community is kind of being built, because I do see the creatives as a community. Not just the podcast is one part of it, but I see it as a place where, we can come together over our, passion for just being creative.
And just little things like, I remember talking to you maybe a year or two ago. Hey, should I incorporate? And I was at the same stage. I was just incorporating. Yeah. And like, you can't go to everybody about that, because people don't know. Like, how do I incorporate? How should I do it? A Canadian corp, an Ontario corp. Do I pay myself dividends? Do I pay myself this? And like, you can't have that conversation with probably 80-90% of people, because they're not working in a corporation that they own, right? Yeah. And so it does feel like, who do I ask? Right? Who can I talk to about the struggles I'm having, right? And, I was talking with one of my old bosses, like, hey, like, how do you navigate payroll? How do you navigate WSIB? Things that like I can't just ask somebody about because they don't know. Yeah. Right? So it is a much smaller subset of the population that have the same experiences that you're having. Totally.
But what I've found is, if you do have a conversation with someone who is in doing it that way, they're always willing to share.
They're so nice, so outgoing. There's no barriers up. Everyone just wants to, and like, that's the one part I love about this whole creative community, and is there's a lot of support for other people. There's a lot of, I want to see you succeed. Totally. There's a lot less, oh, why did they get the promotion? Because everyone's working for their own thing. Yeah. Right. So
yeah. I kind of like, I remember early on, like, gatekeeping, like my ways of doing things or how I achieve certain results. It was like part of it was from me being immature, like the gatekeeping. And as I, things started growing, I realized like gatekeeping is limiting me. So I started being like, screw it. You ask me a question, I'm going to tell you everything. Yeah. Within reason. I'm not going to tell you my deepest, darkest secrets, but if you ask me a question and you're interested and you're genuine about it, you're not like being sketchy. Like, I'm going to give you as best of an answer as I can. And, that's gotten me quite far. I'm never shy. If I can't do something, I'll throw a referral out. I want to get as many people, on as possible and help them kind of move forward, because, I instead of seeing everyone as competition, although maybe they might be, I'd rather them be on my team and we can go together.
Absolutely. And it took me a while to learn this too, but like, there's enough, whatever business you're in, there's enough for everybody that wants to do it. Yeah. So like, there's no harm in telling somebody how you landed that contract or how you landed that client, because they're not going to take yours. Yeah. Right. And in your industry, my industry, whatever industry, like, there's that personal connection, which is what's securing your clients. It's not just your processes.
Totally. Right? Yeah. I want to just kind of circle back to, you were saying how you had trouble motivating people. Yeah. Is that people in your team or clients? And also, I'll ask you that, then I'll just follow up.
No, a lot of it's people on my team.
Okay.
It is, I mean, it's a commission-based industry, right? And this year has been slower than previous years for a lot of people.
Because it costs a lot of money to borrow money, right?
Yeah, exactly. With interest rates going up, transactions are going down. So, I mean, there are a lot of brokers out there, a lot of agents out there who are seeing a 20-30% decrease in business. Mm-hmm. And, just a little thing, like I'm hosting a mandatory, I don't do mandatory meetings, but I'm hosting one annual mandatory meeting for business planning for the entire team.
Nice.
And even that, I'm getting people like, that day doesn't work. And I'm like, man, this is one day a year. Like I got 365 days a year, do whatever you want. One day a year, just come. And it's not like I'm just being like, come to the office. I'm like, I'm getting a restaurant for us. I'm booking like an upstairs at it. So we're going to have some food, some drinks. We're all going to share our business plans, right? But a lot of people are like, I don't really want to do a business plan. I just do work. And you can do that, but if you don't write it down, if you don't target it, if you don't track it, it won't grow. Yeah. It won't. You gotta have, hey, I was here in this month last year. I want to be here in this month this year. Well, how? You can just say it, but if you're not tracking your growth, tracking your transactions, tracking your, cost per client, your income per client, your cost per lead generation, that kind of stuff, you won't be able to control them and you won't be able to grow them. So I'm trying to get the team in, and it's tough to get them to, it's like a 10-page business plan. It's not.
Is there like a template for it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's check boxes and blank things, man. Fill it out.
Yeah, just fill it out.
Fill it out. The math is there.
I might need one of those.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd actually love, because that is one thing that I struggle with planning, future planning, because part of me just wants to just live now and enjoy life now and just like things. But then the lack of planning means there's lack of direction. And that, like, when I don't have a direction or somewhere to go towards, I feel so lost. Like,
and then, one of my first coaches said, like, take 4 days a week to work in your business. Yeah. And 1 day a week to work on your business. Nice. And if you do that, your business will grow. Interesting. Because if you spend 5 days a week working in your business, you have a job. Okay. Right? But if you work on your business, you can actually grow your business to be that scalable, sellable, replicable asset. Interesting. Right? Yeah. So I do that. This is my Fridays. Today's Friday.
Working on the business.
I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm working on the business. I'm transacting files. I'm coaching my agents. Mm-hmm. I'm doing lender meetings, that kind of stuff. Fridays, I'm generating my Facebook ad content. I'm working on my automated workflows. I'm templating new emails. I'm looking at my open percentages of my templated emails to my click-throughs on those templated emails. I'm rewording them, tweaking them here and there to try and increase those. Mm-hmm. And I do that on my Fridays.
I like that.
So, I mean, for sure, approach. The phone rings, the emails happen. There's still some work that happens, but there's a lot of ability on a Friday because it's it's still a financial institution driven industry. So like Fridays after 2:00, not a lot's happening.
Because you can't really.
The banks are done, right? The lawyers are done. The banks are done. Right. Like, everyone's kind of pieced out for the weekend. So that's when I find I'm most efficient on improving the business.
Nice. Yeah. I'm definitely going to try that because, only as of this year, I've hired on Ryan. You met him earlier. Ryan's working with us and we have some subcontractors that work with us, and I'm starting to be able to take a workload off me from the actual video production. Exactly. So now I like that approach of working on the business because I would want to grow it for the team so there's just more opportunities, more experiences to come. So I like that approach. Scalable,
replicable processes and best practices for your team are going to be huge. And what I find, I'm using I used to use checklists. So I used to send out, hey, here's how you do this. Check. Now what I've been doing is actually using BombBomb. You can check out Loom as well. These are both softwares. So that what they'll do is they'll record your computer screen, they record your face. And so I talk to my team while I do a task. And it puts those cool little rings around your mouse when you click on it so they see where you're clicking. And then I'm able to record these videos, and I usually send out 1 or 2 videos a week and say, hey, here's how you do this.
That's cool.
And then it builds this database where when new agents come on and they have a question, I'm like, oh, go check out this video.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, go check out this video. And they're able to hear me explain it, because it's tough to take what's in your brain and put it on paper sometimes, right? So they're able to hear me explain it. They're able to look at the software while I'm doing it. So it's not like they're looking at a sheet, then looking at software. I don't have to be taking like screenshots of this and that. And they're able to say, okay, hey, I need to create this specific document for compliance. Here's how you create it. Here's what needs to be included. Here's how it goes out. Right?
I like that.
And then now they've got a big database. It's on Dropbox, and the videos just keep adding to it, and they're all, searchable. Go figure it out, and it takes a lot of the workload off of me answering the same question 6 times. Here's a video.
Yeah. I like that. So kind of before I wrap, I have a couple non-work related stuff. Sure. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? So, I do still enjoy my cars. I got a nice Mercedes wagon. I like that thing. I got an S2000 that I drive in the summers.
You still have that thing?
The S2000 still
so
kicking
you do
around.
Have a fun car.
I got
you didn't autocross the S2000?
I autocross the S2000
okay.
sometimes. Yeah. So I got those. I've recently taken up shooting as a hobby.
Cool.
So I do a lot of skeet shooting, which has been I've been doing
Literally
that too.
went last weekend.
That's sick. Yeah. So I mean, I got the little gun collection in the closet, which is a lot of fun. And other than that, like, I try to spend time with my kids. I try to play board games with my teenager, because it's a wild world for teenagers, right? So we try to do like a Friday night board game.
Yeah.
She's 15 turning 16, so it won't be long until Friday nights she's gone. So
yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to do that. Spend time with my wife and my 2 little ones while they're still little, because that's one of my first coaches said, it's unreal how fast the first 4 years go. Don't work through them.
Like through your kids' first 4 years?
Yeah. And he's not wrong, man. Like, my little boy is 3.5 now, and I feel like it was yesterday he was born, right? So like, it's one of those things I'm trying to spend. And my wife's off work permanently now. Like, she's a government employee, but she's wrapping up at the government, and then she'll be home full time because she wants to spend the next few years with the kids too. Yeah.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
So kind of parting advice.
We gotta go shooting.
Yeah,
all
I'm
right,
actually down.
Right,
let's go.
sick.
I just I got into it just for sport. I think I'm too much of a pussy to go hunting, but I might get there.
Me too. I'm sport shooting.
Yeah,
I'm not a big my brother made me get my license for coyote control out of his property. he lives out in Merrickville. He's got 120 acres, and he's got a coyote problem. He's got like 50 chickens. So he's like, go get your license. You can help me out. And I was like, hey, cool. And then I went and shot clays, and I was like, this is sick.
It's so fun.
This is sick.
I know. Like I know like guns can be a controversial thing, but again, it's a tool, but if used improperly can cause harm. I like it for sport. I think there's some value in learning how to hunt, because we just buy packaged meat in the store
for sure
with our eyes closed. And I feel like I need to experience that process of acquiring meat to appreciate it a little more.
My brother got a turkey this year, or last year. Got a turkey last year. Turkey season's deer season's about to start, or whatever. He's gonna get a deer this year. We've been squirrel hunting. He eats squirrel, so like we go crazy. Squirrel hunting on his property. He loves it. He's wild with it. He's all into this homesteading, self-maintaining life, right? So
it's good to know how to do.
We go
honestly.
out and like, man, shooting a squirrel's hard. Yeah, those little things are fast. So
that's hilarious. Yeah, man, we'll go out to the range sometime.
For sure.
Break some clay. But yeah, kind of parting advice for people who might be kind of bogged down by all these news stories of, oh my God, their interest rate went up again. Like, what's some advice you might kind of just leave our viewers, our listeners with?
There's a couple cliche things, don't try to time the market, put time in the market.
Nice.
Date the rate, marry the house. There's a lot of bullshit out there.
Love the ride.
Just do it. Just give it a shot. If you think that you're in a position where homeownership in that city is on your target, the sooner you buy the property, the better. Trying to wait for the market to collapse is a fool's game. I've got a couple clients that, for years before I was a broker and I was buying places, like, oh, we're going to wait for the housing market. We're going to wait for the housing market. And then like COVID hit, it's doubles.
Yeah.
So what are you waiting for? Like, just give it a shot, do it. And, you know, if you set yourself up in a way where you're not stretching your budget too thin, you've got that pride of homeownership. You've got that place that can't be sold, where you're going to get evicted, where nobody else is going to move into it, where like it's your castle kind of thing.
Nice,
so just give it, just do it.
Just give it and call
me and call me before you think you should call me. If you think you're buying in 2 years, call me. If you think you're buying in 1 year, call me. Like you call me 3 months before you're about to buy a house. There's no time to structure your finances differently. There's no time to, you know, don't buy that new car. There's no time to structure things up in a way that the lender's going to like.
Totally.
But if you contact 2 years out, I'm happy to work. I'll work with you 2 years, 5 years, whatever. Eventually, I want to see you get to that success point.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm stressed. Don't buy that new car. It's a horrible investment. Buy one that's at least 3 years old.
Yeah.
Save a lot of money and you'll still get a sick car. Before we leave today, Tyler, I want to ask you a couple rapid fire questions.
Sure.
I like to end the podcast on these just for fun. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Nice. You're going to battle with one item from your office. What are you bringing?
One item from my office.
Yeah.
You want to battle?
Yeah, like you got to go like old gladiator style, where they're all just running in a field like thousands. Like, what are you bringing as your weapon?
I'm bringing my racing helmet. I keep it on I keep it on a shelf in my office.
Nice. I guess to hit.
I was like, what the fuck else am I bringing?
Yeah, a chair or something.
I don't know if I'm gonna wear it or hit somebody with it, but it's gonna do something.
Yeah, that's sick. That's a good answer. If you were to do anything other than being a mortgage broker, what would you do? Like dream job or?
I would probably at this point in life try to work finance at a car dealership. There's a very good chance that in the next 2 or 3 years I open up my own mortgage investment corporation, which is like a private lending entity.
Cool.
So private lending is something that's really on my radar. I've got I'm just dabbling into it. So I'm doing some private lending now. I really see that as a successful way to kind of exit having to work every day if you've got your money out there working for you with second mortgages or stuff like that. Yeah.
So you basically become a bank at that point.
Yeah, essentially it's a registered corporation. Like it's called a mortgage investment corporation. You lend, you're still governed by, you know, government agencies provincially. And I use a lot of them for financing stuff for clients. And so I see how they work and I see the money they're making and I say, maybe this is all right.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that about sums up our time on this episode.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that was a fun conversation. Yeah. I learned many things from you today, and I hope you did too. If you have any questions about buying a house,
you can get me at thegriffinmortgage.com.
Yeah.
Put it in the super easy. Yeah, he'll put it in the description for you.
Tyler's info. Yeah, because it's you know, it's something it's always a hot topic, real estate. Oh my God, interest rates. So call Tyler, have a chat, and you know, build that future. But for now, thanks for watching. The Creatives is available on all your favorite streaming platforms. It's available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and then it's available on YouTube as well, so you can view it in 4K on there. One shift we've had recently is it used to be hosted on the Pano Media YouTube channel, but now The Creatives has its own channel. So check it out.
Subscribe to both.
Subscribe to both. Yeah, on Pano Media we do lots of cool, like behind the scenes, behind the setup, kind of literally just walk through things as they're unfolding and show you how we do things. So there's literally nothing. I have nothing to hide. I want to share that so that you can see how we do it, and you know, maybe have you one day be part of our team and innovate what we're doing and make it even better. So again, shout out Midnight Hour Studios, shout out Pano Media for everything, and shout out to you for watching or listening. That has been episode. I quit calling them episode numbers. That's been an episode with Tyler Griffin. Thank you, and don't forget to enjoy yourself. See you on the next one.